America is be true to what you say.
That's right, America. Be true to what you said on paper. It's just paper, right? It must be invisible ink in there because a lot of. Welcome back to At the Round Table with Memley. I'm your host, Larry Ellison, in studio with my brother from another. The Dr. Bradley is in the house giving you a checkup from the neck up. Good morning, sir.
It's nice to be here, brother. The day that God made.
There you go. What that saying you always say? It's nice to be seen rather than viewed.
It's better to be seen than viewed.
Okay, so we all know what that means.
Exactly.
They say you look pretty enough to bury.
Not here.
I say good morning, Pastor Hobbs. How are you, sir?
Outstanding, thank you.
Crack statistician and engineer over there getting facts in real time. Yes, sir. You're listening to At the Round Table Live. The calling number here is 617-265-2679. 617-265-2679. Also, we want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guarantee Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. Guaranteed to exceed your expectations. You know, I think Dr. Bradley was a great lead in when we were talking about the safety in the schools.
Right.
And I am pleased that our guests on the line are going to do the introduce them to some, but I know them intimately. They're people that I have a lot of respect for, working with them and watching what they've unfortunately had to do because our elected officials are not stepping in and providing safety, a safe learning environment in our Boston Public Schools. So we're pleased to introduce Dave Serlis, who is and Renee Callender. Dave Serlis is the founder of SOS, which is Save Our Schools, a group founded in response to him watching in real time at these meetings at the L.J. Baker House, the violence taking place there. And Renee Callender is also on the line. We're going to bring them in a second. She is the founder of Promoting Conflict Resolution Inc., a nonprofit that is trying to get into the school system here in Boston to help with the conflict, which there is
which is needed. I mean, we actually talked about that in the first hour.
Yeah.
Is how do you deal with conflict minus violence?
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't have to have violence. It's not the
Right.
only solution to conflict. And a lot of kids don't understand. I had the same issue when I was the director of climate and safety in Randolph. Is that they had to teach our kids there's a way to actually deal with these issues.
Right.
We all have them
Right.
as adults, but there's a way to deal with them without resorting to violence.
Absolutely. And this whole notion that the police are the pipeline of prison for kids, behavior, because you're setting up to fail, because you cannot exhibit this on any college campus. You cannot exhibit this behavior in any workplace. You would be fired. You would be the police would be called.
Listen, we have police at in college campuses too.
Every college pretty much has a security. Right?
Are we the pipeline to from
That's
college to prisons?
Right.
No, it's not the police.
Right.
It's the behavior that the police has to address under the cover of the law.
But
we can talk. That's another conversation.
Absolutely.
But we do have.
All right. So good morning, Dave. Welcome to the round
Good
table.
morning. Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time this morning. So, Dave, before we bring Renee in and introduce her, tell us a little bit what SOS is for our listening audience and why you came up with this group and this organization, what you're doing.
Sure. And again, thanks for having us
Absolutely.
on. I appreciate the opportunity, and you're already hitting on some of the topics already in the intro, so thank you. Boston SOS stands for Safety of Our Schools. It's a community movement organization that rose up out of some folks that were meeting at the Ella Baker House for the Violence Reduction Task Force. That meeting goes on every Wednesday. There were a few of us who were a part of that group who in the fall of 2021 were hearing week after week of such very serious school safety issues, heartbreaking kinds of things that we were hearing: guns in school, bullying, assaults, and after a while, it almost overwhelming. So in January, a small group of us said we've got to do something, and we began to organize. And so we put together a group to start Boston SOS to first of all call attention to the seriousness of the school safety issues, not isolated incidents in a school here or there, but to draw attention that this was a citywide Boston Public School, well, school-wide issues across the city, because what we discovered was that people would hear a media account of a gun in a school here and then not hear anything else. And it seemed like these stories would be very disconnected for people, and we wanted to connect the dots and say, no, this is not isolated in this one school here or one school over there, but this is system-wide, and we need to sound the alarm, so to speak, and say, hey, this needs serious attention, because whatever safety plan is in place is not working.
Well,
that was the beginning.
And I thank you for flagging that and highlighting, like you said, when we're talking about schools, we're talking about all students, and that there's a mindset predominantly in BPS that, you know, anyone that's not in that realm is not their issue. And we are concerned with all students and staff who are in the school system here in the city of Boston. And that's how it should be looked at, through one lens, that if any one of them is not safe, then none of them are safe, because this spills out into the public domain. So if our kids, we're seeing this exhibited throughout the city. One location that comes to mind is every day, you know, that Burger King at Columbia Road and Washington Street. It ties up a lot of resources with multiple different schools, public charter schools that come there and are causing havoc in the afternoons there for the businesses, the folks in the community. So we've got to get that under control. So I appreciate that. We're going to bring in our other guests as well, our retired police detective, Renee Callender, who served the city of Boston for 30 plus years. I don't know how when she's only 35, but and she is the founder of her own organization. Renee, what is the name of your organization again, and why it was founded?
Good morning, Larry, and thank you very much.
Hold up. What about me, Renee? Now, come on now. We go a long way back. District 11. This is Willie Bradley.
Oh my goodness, Willie. I didn't even recognize your voice. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Uh-oh. Listen, don't be telling out here.
I hear you, girl. I hear you. Okay, we'll leave it alone. I'm sorry. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, likewise. So, my name is Renee Callender. I am the founder and CEO of Promoting Conflict Resolution, Inc., which is a nonprofit organization geared around supporting the family. Because if the family unit is not together and there's a breakdown in communication or resources, then there's a breakdown with our children. When we start, and I am a supporting member of Boston SOS. And what I'm finding is within the school, we don't talk to our children. There's an expectation that they go to school and this is what they're supposed to do. But we're not giving them the tools outside of the school to utilize and implement the tools. And sometimes the breakdown begins at home. And when I say the breakdown begins at home, because there's a disconnect with what I'm finding, there's a disconnect between the school and the home when it relates to the child. And you'll hear faculty says, well, we called the parents and nobody responded. But there's so many dynamics that go along with that parents aren't always available to respond to the school within the school hours. And sometimes it takes a little bit after school. And so what we don't do is we fill the schools and fill all, and we talk about the community, and we give the kids resources, but we don't give the family the support.
Right.
And so, like everything else, family needs stability and access and education in order to produce and help bundle positive behavior coming out of our children.
Right.
You know, one of the things that we did in Randolph, and Renee is right on target on this. If you recall earlier in the broadcast, we were talking about what I did as a climate and safety director in Randolph to bring that school back up to the level where they can have education. Well, one of the things that we did was that we set aside the times where the teacher could email the parent. Because sometimes she was absolutely on target on this, that the call would be made, and it goes into a callback bucket, and the callback never happens. And so when we suspend the student, what I was getting from the parent, no one ever contacted me. No one ever gave me a heads up that we had a problem. I could have easily resolved the situation only if I were a part of the process. So we had to put in a practice where the parent, this teacher, through the union, by the way, would have an opportunity to actually send emails out and then, time those emails as well as put a flag on it if it was open or not. That was just one of the methods that we took.
Yeah.
Can you turn me up a little bit?
So Dave, I want to pose this question to you. Because you were attending these meetings at the Baker House prior to starting SOS. What was you attending these on a regular basis? Did you see any representation at this meeting? Because there's a lot of this. I call it like the think tank on Wednesday. Did you see any representation from the BPS there during this time when all this conversation was taking place?
No. Yes or no question. The answer, no. So really disconnected, and that's and the point Renee brought up and Mr. Bradley brought up. There's this big disconnect. It seems like the schools are kind of isolated off on their own. And while on the one hand they will say, well, we can't do this whole thing on our own, we need community involvement, it doesn't seem there's a real clear strategy in how to engage the community. And when the community in return is saying, hey, we want to be involved, and hey, there's an issue at the Burger King with some of your students, we need your help to engage that as they're leaving school and going to and fro, there's no response. So there's a big disconnect in terms of the school's connection with the community, which gets to your question that they ought to have a stronger representation every week there, to really hear what's going on and engage and develop these bigger partnerships that are really necessary.
Yeah. So I've heard you testify at the city council on these matters very eloquently, as well as Renee. My question is, have you brought these concerns to the superintendent of Boston Public Schools, Skipper, as well as the current Mayor Wu regarding these issues? And also, I'll follow up to that to both of you, is that there's in this week's edition of the Bay State Banner out there in the news, is that the mayor has voted down an elected school committee. I want to know your guys' opinion and your take on that. Do you think that would help at least with shaping policy in the Boston Public Schools in having an elected or an appointed school committee? But
good question. Let me answer the first one first, and let me also jump in that Renee Callender is doing a tremendous job with her organization and is a great partner with SOS and a key leader in SOS. And it's an example of what we're trying to model is we need a lot more engagement with schools and community partners like Renee and her organization that bring some critical resources and wisdom to bear on the lives of young people and their families. Renee is a strong voice for engaging families, not just the young person, but the family, and that's an important
a wraparound service.
Really appreciate it. Oh, absolutely, and not just rhetoric. We're trying to model it on the ground with families and students that contact SOS and connect them with Renee and her organization and what they do. So the question about whether I've contacted the mayor and the superintendent. So we started this under the previous school superintendent in terms of addressing the issues, and then she resigned, and now we have a new superintendent, Superintendent Skipper, who just started in the fall. Mayor Wu, I sent emails out last January, February, saying, hey, this is what we're doing. We're concerned about school safety. We want to be not just shouting over the wall. We want to be part of the solution if we can help. But we need to take seriously what's going on. And when I get an email back from her, I'll let you know, because I haven't yet.
Okay.
And in fact, I received a community service award here in East Boston.
Well, congratulations.
From Station 7. Appreciate that honor. And she was there to hand out the award, and very sweet and nice that the mayor would show up and honor the proceedings and the event with her presence and so on. But after I shook her hand, I asked her if I could talk with her about school safety sometime. Gave her my card, And again, when I get the call about that meeting, I'll let you know because I haven't gotten a call yet.
Okay.
Mary Skipper, I was at a hearing where she was testifying, and I had a chance to testify. And before the meeting, I spoke with her, and again, explained what we're doing. Here's my card, and we want to be involved. But no, we haven't heard back from them. So,
so to the point of the elected or appointed school committee, where do you guys stand? Where does SOS stand on that?
Well, we really haven't discussed it internally. I guess my first thought is the school safety issues are so serious that it seems like there's all of these other distractions that happen. I mean, to implement something like that, and if in fact there was to be elected school committee people, you're talking about sort of campaigns and elections, and what we're saying is the alarm bells are sounding now. The weapons are going into school every day. There are serious safety concerns that we don't want to have the horrific event on the news where somebody is seriously injured or killed in a school because we didn't take action. And so it seems like there's a lot of other things that the city council picks up. And rather than honing in, and maybe that is something that needs to be looked at, but it seems like they keep picking up things that are months in the making when we're saying there's a concern now we need to address. And
Renee, so your conflict resolution approach, how has that been received by BPS? I know you started a while in conjunction with your work with SOS. Are you making any headway in getting them to embrace a worthwhile program such as this?
The answer to your question is yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going to say to you that I was accepted as a community partner with BPS, and when I find out what that really means, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I went to one school, and I'm not going to name the school. I went to the school which was definitely having problems and troubles. The principal wanted me to do an introduction with the children. When I went into the classroom, they gave me the worst class that they had, and she explained that to me. Once I was able to gain order and respect with the children, and they began to engage, she told me, she was very impressed and my deliverance and how I was able to include academic, real-life situations and kind of keep the kids engaged for the 45 minutes that I had them. And she told me she'd call me back. And I've never heard from her again.
So you and Dave are waiting for calls that haven't come.
Yes. And one of the interesting factors that I always come up and I ask myself, Larry, are we really looking for solutions for the problem, or do we want to keep talking about the problem because we really think that nobody really cares?
Oh, that's the solution.
Right. Well, I think that to that point, and I'm going to bring Rhodes in as well. He's on the line. Is that it was interesting to me, and I couldn't even watch it from what I've heard from other folks, was that at the mayor's State of the City address that she kind of glossed over and didn't really talk about the schools, and that there was no real outcry from the parents or even the public or even our elected officials. That's something that is out there in the public domain as much as the schools are, that wouldn't be the focus, in my opinion, of the state of the city. Because if we don't correct that, the state of the city really is failing. If it's failing our most vulnerable. Dave? Go ahead, Renee. You want to weigh in first? Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Renee.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
But then you need to come back. You need to come back and ask yourself this: are we really fighting to keep and educate and upward mobility of our children, or are we really concerned about preserving the worldwide view of the city of Boston, the historical aspect of the city of Boston, the money-making city of Boston? It's interesting how she's pushing this rent control, right? She's really pushing rent control. Like, that is the forefront. just taking no time putting that out and highlighting it in all these press releases and these and all these good things, but we're not addressing educating, like you said, Larry, our most vulnerable. We're not talking about making school a safe haven.
A learning,
a
place where people can learn. But also to your point about that is that, you're pushing to tell landlords what they can do with their property, but yet the public has decided that they want to have an elected school committee, the residents in the city of Boston, and voted, and you're telling them that they should not have a say in who decides on their kids, but yet you want to have a say in how much they can charge for rent in their homes. I see a little hypocrisy going on here.
I saw it a long time ago,
That
brother.
could just be me. Dave, before I go to Rhodes, I want to get your take on the mayor's state of the city and like I said, kind of glossing over the problems that are every day in the schools. And the other piece, like I said, is that I think they talk about BPS and not talk about the other schools. The charter schools are a big part of, because they're funded by out of the same budget, and we're not talking about a small amount. We're talking about close to a 1.4 billion. With the increase they're looking for next fiscal 2024, it will increase the BPS Boston Public School budget to 1.4 billion dollars for a declining population of students. Where are we spending this money? Any company that would go to their stockholders and say, we're asking for a $68 million increase, and we've shown no increase, no prosperity for the company, but we want you to continue to fund it.
Yeah.
How do you think that conversation would go?
It wouldn't go well.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's a disregard for the voices of parents, and parents are. In some ways, when we've tried to enlist parents to speak up more publicly, there's a reluctance for different reasons, and I get it. So there's a bit of fear, but we're starting to engage parents, and in some stronger ways. For example, I talked with some Latino mothers here in East Boston, and I told them about the concerns and safety issues and what we're proposing, and I said maybe we need metal detectors, and one of them said not maybe, we need metal detectors. I mean, these mothers, when they hear the safety concerns, they know this is this is their children's education. They're stepping up very strongly, so we're starting to see a growing sense of urgency. We've seen it all along, but
Dave,
now parents
Dave,
able to speak up.
Right, Dave, you been to City Hall? Have you been to City Hall?
I went to get my neighborhood parking sticker a week ago, and those people are criminalizing me. You know that, right?
They turned you into a criminal, right?
When I walk in that door, everybody is staring at me, thinking that guy right there, he's a criminal. Right, exactly. I mean, the hypocrisy of that. This little factoid is extraordinary.
Right,
and we have city councilors. Now we have 4 city councilors actually who are advocating for metal detectors in school.
Right.
And they're advocating for school police back in school, and we applaud them for that voice. But there's a large number, 9 other city councilors, who either are not speaking up or are opposed, saying we're criminalizing our children, and yet they're working in a place protected by metal detectors. The hypocrisy is
not only
loud.
Right, and not just metal detectors, Dave, but they have security there, right? They have uniformed security, right, who identifies them, but they also have armed Boston police officers who patrol City Hall, who also protect the mayor, they have an armed Boston police officer that 24 hours a day, whether the mayor is there or not, is sitting in front of her home to make sure, and I don't take issue with any of that.
No,
but like you said, it's the hypocrisy, right? That if you took a group of kids down to City Hall from any school, they would not be exempt from going through the metal detectors. If they go to Boston Juvenile Court for any court appearances in any court in the city of Boston, they will not be exempt from going through metal detectors. They don't have a psychiatrist waiting from on the other side to bring them down from this traumatic experience, right? I think it's more traumatic when I'm watching a video of young people running for their lives
Yes.
from a stabbing and saying, I'm not going back to school, because I think that's more traumatic than walking through and a beeper going off and someone may have to look into your bag to see if you're carrying
I also
something.
think it's interesting to actually kind of equate criminalizing students with a metal detector. I don't see that connection, but that's just me. The other thing is that I'm thinking I'm listening to the conversations, and I think people have some excellent ideas. Who's actually losing here? And I'm thinking,
who's lost?
I feel very bad for the student, because when you think about our education paradigm today in America, we're educating kids to do jobs that are no longer here. That's the first thing that hits my head. So, and that's not happening in all schools, by the way. In some schools, the schools of the elite, we're educating kids to do jobs that are not even created yet. Like robotics and repairing those and AI and things of that nature. So I would like to hear a conversation. We're not here yet,
right.
And I'm not saying that we're wrong. We're spending this copious amount of energy on dealing with security, safety in our schools, when we should be spending our energy on how do we better educate our kids to participate and be successful in a future economy that's worldwide. I don't know if I said that right, but this is my point. You said it right. That is the sad piece here. You know what I mean? Our kids are already behind, and they will be significantly behind, because we have to deal with an issue that other people have already dealt with.
Right.
It just boggles my mind.
Rose, want to bring you in before we let you go. You want to say, sir?
No, it sounds like literally that our children are being traumatized with the experience that they're going through right now in school. If they're not being educated and they're worried about their safety, and they're more worried about what's going on, or if they're going to get stabbed, or if they're going to get shot, or whether they even want to go to school, how can they concentrate on learning?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Learning, like I said, is not paramount when you have to worry about, and it's not just in the schools, and that's what I'm saying, is this spills over. We had a huge melee in the Dudley Nubian Square, whatever you want to call it, the other day with about 50. This is a common occurrence, and folks are kind of becoming numb to it, that they don't even get excited about it anymore, and that it's almost expected. Like, okay, here we go again. It's 4:30. Yep, the calls like clockwork start coming in, tying up calls for service to the Burger King, because these kids have started, and the response from BPS has been lackluster.
It's kind of funny when I think here about the Burger King. So we had the same issue in Randolph.
Oh, did? Okay.
Yeah, in fact, we had to shut down the dining area during the time from schools when school is out until about 4:00, and then they reopened the dining area, and that resolved the problem.
Right.
Because kids were coming there, they were buying a burger, and they were just sitting there and doing their thing,
taking over.
So we said to the manager, shut it down, shut it down from this time to this time, and they didn't have a warm place to congregate, so they left. It was just that simple.
Rose, thank you, sir. Appreciate you, and please keep listening. Appreciate it. Good, Dave. Yeah.
I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave, you wanted to say something?
So I mean, all of this is relevant to what we've talked about at SOS, because one of the things we would get when we were first starting, we were simply trying to say, hey, there is a crisis. The city needs to do something about it. To which, if we had any media approach us, would say, well, what do you think should be done? And so, rather than just shoot off the hip, we crafted a 3-pronged school safety plan that includes metal detectors, school police, and a comprehensive early intervention strategy that includes, and this is one of the points being made here, enhanced vocational training. So that what we try to do is look very holistically at school safety. And by the way, we've said it here, and we say it again and again. The foundation of a good education is a safe learning space. If you don't have that, we can't educate children. So we need to get this right. These are step number 1. We've got to provide a safe space, and we're not.
No.
We're not.
No.
And this is our frustration after a year of advocacy, that we really haven't made any substantial gains in terms of that.
It's
issue.
like being on the hamster wheel, right? We just keep.
Oh,
spinning.
It absolutely is.
So we want to.
Is.
Yeah, we want to.
You know what?
Good.
Mayor Superintendent Skipper was interviewed by a local station recently. They asked her about metal detectors. And she said, well, we want to focus on building enhanced relationships with our students. That needs to be our focus. Basically saying metal detectors are not a key component of the strategy, which we think is erroneous. And isn't it interesting that metal detectors are looked down upon until there's an incident? Charlestown High School last year, 2 loaded guns went into the school the same day, found.
Right.
And the next day or immediately after, there are metal detectors, and nobody's squawking. Nobody's making a beef about it, right?
Right. The world didn't end.
Jeremiah Burke had a stabbing at the beginning of the year, put metal detectors in. In fact, there was a shooting outside the school the next week, and we believe that shooting could have easily happened inside the school, except for metal detectors.
That was a deterrent.
How much more tragic. And so metal detectors do deter kids from bringing guns into school. And prevent great tragedies, and why wouldn't we have that as a tool? Now, let me say this too: the incident that just happened with the 16-year-old who stabbed 2 people and killed one, and that trial is to come and so on. She's being charged with homicide. That happened as a result of social media things going on. The boyfriend sending explicit pictures, she getting mad. Social media fuels things so quickly. A school could assume, well, we haven't had any issues here, like the Jeremiah Burke, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of a crisis. And so we say, why wait to the crisis?
Well,
let's get out in front of it,
and Dave,
and let's prevent the crisis.
We try to tell them all the time it doesn't remain in school, and sadly, some folks in the school system see it as a victory lap if it doesn't take place in the school. They go, it's not a school problem. It is a school. If you look at it from that perspective, then you're looking at it from the wrong lens. We're gonna squeeze in a call. We have some calls backing up here. Want to get some calls, and folks have some questions. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Good morning.
You have a caller. You have a question for our guest.
Yeah, I'll try to make it brief as possible. I want to make this perfectly clear, Dr. Bradley, Larry Ellis, and to your guests. Nobody has the child's best interest except the parent or single parents. Let's be clear and be realistic. That's number one. Number two, I understand that the parents don't have all the answers, and you can't teach your child what you don't know. Yes, then that's when the teacher comes in. Both the teachers and parents occupy the same space in a child's mind for that child or kids to be productive later on in life. I understand that perfectly well. Also, let's not forget, a school is a building. It's what's inside of it that matters. It's the education that the child and the teacher has that makes them better. One boss off the other. I'm being realistic here.
No.
Also,
I think
when
it's
it comes to the I'm sorry, Larry, but when it comes to the college city counselors, yes, some of the city counselors are parents. I understand that perfectly. But the problem is, I don't hear any of those city counselors have their kids in the Baltimore schools, because if they did, it would have been an investment to them and to their kids to make sure that things like that should never have happened, because these politicians are so reactive and not proactive. Also, when it comes to metal detectors, I'm anti-metal detector, because what you send a negative message to an elementary school kid that they're going to have metal detectors inside. Now you're adding more trauma to that kid, because now you're thinking, I don't care what color the kid is, elementary school kid. You're just telling that kid. Okay,
so let me jump in. Let me jump in, and I'll let our callers. I think you have some fair points that you're raising. The one I think I want to have here from our guests is what has been the response, and I know Dave alluded to a little of it as far as the parents, because I think without their support, without them leading the charge, who have a stake in it because their children are in this environment every day, that would send a strong message. Where I do push back on the metal detector, and there's me, and I'll let other folks weigh in as well, is that we live in a world post 9/11 where things are not safe. And I don't see it traumatic. When I take I traveled extensively with my kids. They know when we go to the airport, we have to go through the metal detectors, right? It's for security. We explain to them, this is not criminalizing you. I think if you explain to your children why.
What I meant by not
this is
making
exactly
that connection.
Right. That this is not. See, folks are saying, they're making a criminal out of you because you have to walk through a metal detector. Well, how come they're not advocating that they be removed from airports, from City Hall, from the courts, from all the other places that children go into. As a matter of fact, you go into a lot of buildings now, libraries, things like that. There are metal detectors. It's just the world we live in. And in fact, they kind of blend in where people don't pay attention. So I don't see it as traumatic. I think that's just the buzzword for some folks who want to pretend that they're not Dr. Brown.
I think the gun is more traumatic than the metal detector.
In the stabbings.
Yes, I think the stabbings are more traumatic. I think the results of what happens minus a metal detector is the problem. So preventing that is not a problem because, like you said, metal detectors are a part of our life. Yeah, especially post 9/11. It's a part of the life.
So I'm interested to hear from our guest, Renee. I'll start with you on what the caller is alluding to.
One of the things that I will say is our kids feed off of us. Whatever buzzword that we're sending out, our kids are going to pick up on it. Because, like the caller said, our kids do model us as parents. Yep. So we need to be careful. Okay. We really need to be careful. And I like how you said, Larry, you explain things to your children. If we begin to communicate with our children, that's the beginning step. That is the beginning step. I think there's a lack of communication across the board with parents and children, the school and parents, the school and children. Yes, school is supposed to be a safe haven, but how do we get there? Okay. How do we get there if we're not listening? Because we can't do all the talking.
Dave, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I want to say to the caller that I agree, and by the way, Renee's been a big component of this, that parents are critical and key for their child's education. They're out in the lead. So, and we want to support parents in all of that and in advocating for a good, safe education for their children. And for schools to really connect in better with parents. That's sometimes an issue. It's sometimes the relationship between school and parents can sometimes become adversarial unnecessarily when there's a problem. And so there needs to be some work done on that end. So I wholeheartedly agree with the idea that you're presenting in terms of parents being such a critical and the primary part of their children's care and education. To the metal detector, and believe me, we've spent a lot of time at SOS talking about it. That's one of the points that we get pushback on, that it's called the controversial elements of our proposal. But it's interesting, and people have pointed out where metal detectors are used. And when we talked about it, we did a kind of an internal survey. Where are metal detectors used? If you go to the Boston Garden for any venue, a concert, and believe me, there are teenagers, adolescents in Boston who are paying money to go to Boston Garden to watch their favorite artist do their thing. And they're willing to pay money, and they have to walk through a metal detector. Now, is anybody saying, oh, why does Boston Garden criminalize all those adolescents who are going to the concert? Disney on Ice. I'm bringing my little daughter to see Disney on Ice. I go through a metal detector. Canopy Lake Park, who has thousands of people going in the summer to enjoy a day out, including children and adolescents.
Mostly children. It's geared to children, right?
And you're paying money, by the way, and you go through a metal detector. So, to me, it's a puzzle as to why the advocacy in terms of saying they're criminalizing only in this one location.
Right. Exactly.
Why is it not criminalizing them to go? And so the advocacy should be to remove it from every location, including airports. And who would want to get on an airplane today without metal detectors? I wouldn't fly. We know those are... So it's become a very common form of safety. To me, it reminds me of when I grew up. I'm a little kid. I never wore a seatbelt. My parents never had me wear a seatbelt. We were bouncing around the back seat, but now everybody does, right?
You're right.
I mean, back then it wasn't even on the radar. I might say, and my child, I make them wear a seatbelt. But Daddy, it's too confining. It's too restricting. I don't like it. I want to. No, honey. You need to wear the seatbelt because it's going to protect you and maybe save your life.
And you know what, Dave, to that point, it's like when you said that, when you think about, because now my kids get in the car, even my little one, she gets in the car, she buckles up. I don't even have to tell them because it's become such a routine, and they're not traumatized by it.
Not traumatized by a seatbelt or a metal detector.
No. They don't say, Daddy, why are we going through this? I've explained to them, and they get it. They understand it. And believe me, I don't have to give them a tranquilizer. Once we get through the other side, they're fine. The only thing they're worried about is getting their tablet back because we use that on the plane. But that's it. Dick, thank you, caller. We're going to free up line. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. And hopefully this has been enlightening and informative. About this. Like I said, we can have differences of opinion, and we may not agree on this issue, but it's a respectful venue to have this conversation, and we appreciate your support and your calls. Thank you, sir.
I think it's important that we hold venues responsible for guaranteeing our safety if we should happen to attend there for a concert or anything like that. What I find to be weird is that you can guarantee my safety at a football game, but you can't guarantee my safety at a school.
Right.
I see that that's not, to me, just being stupid.
But this is what you've labeled the boogeyman, law enforcement, and anything that has to do with law enforcement. Yeah. This is law enforcement, activated, right?
Yeah, you're doing all you can to make me safe at a football game, but you're not doing all you can to make my child safe at school.
It's a distraction.
That just
the shiny object,
skin.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if I focus on that, then when they're talking about what's not the learning that's not taking place in the school, right?
There you go.
Right? Because the metal detectors, right? Okay, well then they're not talking about how bad the learning is, right? We're not talking about the state talking about receivership. We're not talking about all these other things that are there in this space, right? So again,
you're going to keep the narrative over here. You don't want the real narrative to come out. Huh?
You want to stay away from that shiny,
I hear you.
that shiny object. That shiny object. That's what it is. Because
I would add in, and Mr. Bradley had mentioned it earlier. So I had a Facebook interaction with a city councilor about school safety issues.
Yeah.
And she kept saying in the interaction, in the back and forth, that we need to find out where the guns are coming from. We need to provide supportive services for our young people. To which to both of those I said yes, and let me know when those meetings are. I'll be there.
Right.
We want to have those conversations. But the immediacy of weapons in school.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to make kids feel like criminals. To which I responded, well, how do you think they feel when there's a loaded gun in the school?
And we don't have them.
And there was no response.
Right, and no one is advocating for them into elementary schools, because we did have a 7-year-old who brought a loaded gun to school, right? So that how traumatic was that, folks? The lines are blazing, so we're going to try to squeeze in a few more calls if you don't mind. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the round table.
Good morning. How are you?
Yes, we're well. We have a question for our guest.
Really quickly,
Sure.
he had talked about the approach of bringing so far what I've heard is every solution except one that we knew worked, which was prayer in school, which was religious teaching and practicing, all of those type of things, and even a sense of school being important, the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, those type of things. During that era, during that time, school violence was considerably lower. And once we used to say, those of us who were in the religious community say, when God was kicked out of school, the metal detectors had to come in. Does your caller have any?
My guest,
your guest have something to say about?
I'll let you hear from them. Who wants to take it
back into the school?
So who wants to take it first? Sure. Renee.
I'm going to jump in.
Start.
Oh, go ahead, Renee.
I will say to you, for a person who is definitely rooted in religion, grew up in the church, raised my children in the church and what have you, I wholeheartedly believe that bringing religion into the school was definitely a positive thing, and definitely a thing that is needed, because we all know that our teaching of the Bible is paramount. The problem comes into play is there's so many different catalysts of religion until how do you become to unify that?
Great point.
And again, parental involvement and parents practice practicing different religion. Their children they don't believe in this. They don't go along with that. And so that's a very complex dynamic to bring in. Yes, we could have a moment of silence. And there's so many different active ways we can implement religion. But I agree with you. I agree with you that we need to get back to the basic fundamentals.
Dave, you want to tackle that?
Well, I'm a pastor in East Boston, pastor of Central Assembly of God Church. So, I share the sense that that faith is such an important, informative part of it. Can be an important, formative part of a person's life. Ground them and root them solidly in a way that without faith, maybe not. The challenge becomes the state kind of sanctioning a particular religion. To be honest, prayer can be in school. Students can pray in school. It's just that the school can't sanction a particular kind of praying and religion. So I think we do need to really reinvigorate. The church needs to step up. Let me tell you that, first of all.
Okay.
The church needs to step up and connect with our young people. I mean, that's one of the things we talk about, the El Baker House, the clergy. So you may remember the 10-Point Coalition. We're taking you back into the 90s.
The dinosaur era.
In the 90s, the public safety things were off the chart in Boston, and there was a crisis where a shooting happened in a funeral in a church, Morning Star Baptist Church. I mean, and the clergy said, hey, the stuff going on the streets, one thing. When they bring it in the house of God, we got to step up. We got to step up. And so the church really began to get engaged in public safety issues, and what a transformation that took place. So to your point, the faith community in Boston really needs to step up and into this and get involved and really engage our kids, and we have a way to preach the gospel and take it to the street.
Well, I like Renee's suggestion there about the moment of silence, because then, like I said, there are so many different factions of religion, is that then you can observe it. You take a moment of silence, and whatever your faith or denomination is, it allows you that moment to reflect on it, right? And I think that would be a compromise where you're not having to say, well, it's this religion. Like, I know if I go to Catholic school, that's what I'm going to get. That's you sign up for it.
But I was going to, if I can chime in,
sure.
I think
it's a talk show.
I'm stuck over here as a pastor myself. I'm smiling because in many cases, when we had that in school, that was the only exposure kids got to God. Basically, that was the only time that they actually had an opportunity to actually, which when they prayed in school. You know what I mean? And during the latter times when they actually started to remove it. Now, when I was a kid, that was commonplace. But it was also commonplace in my home. That's the piece. So it was not foreign to me when we had to stand up and we had to pray or do the allegiance. None of that was foreign because it was something that was mandated in the home, and that's where I think that that the parent has been is absent from the equation here as we try to solve this problem.
And to that point, when I was growing up, as well as you, and I think those of us who still had a connection to church, was that we were brought up in the church, right? And now you might see older people, but I very rarely see young people with their parents.
Actually, I'm very concerned about the future of the church because the fact that when you look out over the pulpit, you do not see from the pulpit over into the congregation. You very seldom see young people.
That's what I thought.
You know what I mean? It's really spotty, and that is where your future is.
So, Carl, how do you Dan? How do you, sure, absolutely.
Well, I just want to chime in. In regards to the church, you have to remember and look back at this. The church's biggest growth was the migration from the south, from the south to the north.
Amen.
Southern people are very embedded and grounded into religion. Most churches right now today, their foundations were built on. And people who have southern roots and believe and maintain those roots, that is your congregation that is coming to church.
Today,
for whatever reason, Northerners do not put that like in pressure and in focal points the way that Southerners did. And I think that's what the problem is. We begin to fall off. As we begin to leave our Southern roots and we adapt the Northern roots, we forget about a lot of things. It's migrating from country to country. We forget about.
Right.
You hear in the streets that they're westernized. They're no longer taking up the morals and values from the country in which they were birthed.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big problem we need to start looking at and addressing.
Right. Well, stand by, folks. So, Dan, thank you. Folks who don't know, Dan Walker is the pastor at New Bethel in Framingham, and also a broadcaster here on Sound Travels, heard every Wednesday morning from 8 to 9 a.m. Dan, these are probably people you want to get on your show as well and talk about that religious aspect of it. I will pass on the contact information for them, because I think it's a conversation that needs to be had about the spiritualness, not just inside the schools, because then that helps outside the schools. You wanted to follow up with something? I just want to put that up.
Really quick comment. Sister Renee is absolutely correct, but I think what I'm speaking to is the hostility concept. If you whatever a religion a person is practicing, if that's allowed to be celebrated within the school, you would have whatever their religion is. If you allow people to celebrate that in the school, those people who are practicing those morals and those values are one less people that you have to worry about carrying guns and knives. So the fact that there's so many religions, but right now the schools have a hostility to the concept.
Right.
Everybody's so afraid to allow this to be said. And I think that's the attitude that needs to be changed.
Well, I'm going to say well said to what you said. Thank you, sir. We're going to we got a couple of minutes, so I want to give our guests an opportunity to give out their contact information, and I have one final question for them. And as well as, this, in this week's edition of the Bay State Band, it says drumbeat calls for cops in schools. Are you guys in favor of having, and like I said, they weren't armed police officers in school. These were safety services. They were school police, but now they're safety service, unarmed, didn't even carry mace. Are you pro or against having those folks return in their former positions? Renee?
Yeah, go ahead, Renee.
I am absolutely for, and the reason why I say they're for is because sometimes within the schools, you need that positive role model. You need somebody that you can confide in. You need someone that you can have positive interaction with. And a lot of times, a lot of things were prevented in the school by that communication and what have you, and the respect that the school police unit had with the children and the children had with them, and the access they had to them.
And
so
quickly,
even though we live in a society of snitching, they were able to tell them who was able to pass on the information to the proper authority.
And quickly, your contact information, so folks, if they want to reach out to you.
My contact information is info at tcrinc.org.
All right, and Dave, I want to get your contact information, and then you'll follow up on that question.
Yeah, the contact information, you can reach us through our website, bostonsos.com. And the answer to the question is yes.
bostonsos.com. Renee Callender, Conflict Resolution, Inc. Wow, what a great hour. I wish we had more time. The phones were jammed. Folks are, social media. No, listen, you guys have to come. We have to make this a regular segment, at some point, because I think it's important. And clearly you see there's an interest in this type of conversation and pushing it. And I think it helps inform the public, but it also helps you guys with your mission to get the information out there. Folks, thank you both. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your morning, and thank you for getting up early with us, Dr. Bradley.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say thank you. Very good conversation. Renee, very nice hearing you again. The young man there who for SOS, a very clever name. I appreciate you. You know what I mean? And we need it.
And he's got a new tagline. I like that he came up. He said, the kids are running, the politicians are running for office, and the kids are running for their lives. I love that.
I love that. I hope it's not copywritten or anything.
No, I was going to steal it from him, but he took it. So. Thank you, folks. You're listening to At the Round Table with Mamla. We're going to take our break, and we'll be right back.
As long as you work hard, hustle real hard. So if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for on